Here.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
LaCroy.
Here.
Mesco.
Here.
Braden. Here.
There's a quorum.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move.
Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Mesco.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden. Aye. LaCroy.
Aye.
Motion carries. I don't believe we have any public comments this evening. So do we have any board reports? Anything you want to chat about?
I've got a quick update for CEDAL. I attended the executive meeting 2 weeks ago, and the superintendent is in place now. The new superintendent, Val Donnan is her name, and she wanted me to share that if you guys are interested in following CEDAL updates, to follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They're very active, or she seems to be very active. I can see an uptick in posts and pictures. They had their first day of school today with some great pictures of the kids getting off the bus. And they are looking to do a solar project as well, kind of piggybacking off of us and the high school. And so they would like to meet with some of us and see how our experiences was, because they heard the buzz around that.
Did she talk anything about the IDEA funds?
She did talk. She did not ask me to include that in here, but that probably is going to be something that you'll mention as well. Yeah, the IDE funding is.
Well, it's always gone through CEDAL, and now it will come directly to the districts. So CEDAL is going to have to change the way they charge us tuition, and that's, she's got 2 or 3 options, I guess.
Yes, she does.
That you'll
it's interesting to see that part.
Okay. Anyone else?
I went to 3 things since the last meeting. I attended the meeting we had for the shutdown firemen, policemen, etc. Really interesting. The main thing I took out of there is that what do we do when there's activity time after school? That's a tough one to deal with. Also, it's very important to get in lockdowns, you get communication going across the district. So those are tough ones to deal with. Is what I picked out of it. It's very interesting, and I didn't realize how long we've been talking about this sort of thing. My gosh, it's been a long time since 911. I attended a diversity committee meeting just to see what's going on there, and et cetera. And very interesting. Again, we're on the right path. I'd have to admit that I see some choices of words reminding me of the time maybe about 20 years ago where a little book came out that said the politically correct bedtime stories. Remember that one? There's different words we're going to have to learn, I guess. So, fasten your seatbelt and get with it. Times are changing again. And then we had a curriculum meeting. The main thing I'll bring, I was only one there. I'll be up. The main thing I would pick out of that we should all know as board members, and I think maybe some concerted action with some other boards would be in order. I don't see how a school district set of administrators and teachers and principals can deal with data that isn't helpful to them. When you consider the investment that we have, the time for the kids taking the tests or whatever, my point is this: the education system or organization in Springfield has got to be squared away so that people know what's going on, so that you can give a test one year and the next year have some idea of what's going on, so you can compare scores and say, well, that's a different test, so I can't compare anything. Well, then all that time we spent putting the kids through this and grading and all that sort of thing, it's organization in Springfield. And I'm just like us all to think about this. If we need to get together with some other boards and say, we need to put a little pressure on down there, because this isn't right. It isn't right at all, and it's very unprofessional. And we deserve more.
I would agree. Changing the tests every 2 or 3 years or whatever is not helpful for anyone, most of all the kids. So certainly something to think about.
they're doing, I'm impressed with what we're doing in the district. I think we're organized well, and we know where we're going as best we can. People change some signs every now and then, and so maybe we have to turn left and then turn right, and et cetera. But the goals are there, and I think they're doing a fine job with what they have to work with there.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? All righty.
So we'll update you on student registration. On our 2 days of registration, we had 60 new students. Monday and Tuesday of this week, we had 39 new extra students. So we're up to 99. The hardest hit was Woodview. If you remember 2 or 3 years ago, excuse me, we had quite a group of students move into the Woodview area. This year, kindergarten was hit with 12 new kindergarten students, putting us well over the parameters of each of those in the kindergarten level. Right, so we will have to add a kindergarten class section. And even with that, the numbers will be between 20 and 22 in each of the classrooms. So it's not what we expected, but it's there. And, you know, we may end up having to add more at Woodview. It's just, they're bulgy. They're up to 450. We have one more classroom we could use. We'd have to take the lab out of it. But after that, we have no space.
Do we have a total amount of kids?
No, we won't have that until usually probably the 3rd day of school. So total numbers so far, I mean, if I can go through each of the buildings, Avon has added 12, Meadowview 8, Park 15, Prairie View 13, Woodview 22. That was just the last 4 days. Frederick 16 and GMS 18. It doesn't include the other days that we had.
So everybody's up over last year.
I can't tell you that because I don't know how many are left. So that's why we've got to wait till the first couple of days and see who shows up and who doesn't show up.
Is that a lot of new students?
It's
Is that about average? Or?
It's been about average, but let's just see how many left. So.
I think it might have been a little bit heavier for just in this last age
Yes.
push.
Yeah.
And so sometimes if we know about that 2 months ago, that makes a big difference. And I heard that we were at about 93 or 94% of all the registered kids completed. So that was a very high number, and I know that's gone up even. That was from last Wednesday.
Right, so that's gone
So
up.
it's gone up even more. So the kids we were expecting were close to, I'm sure we're close to 90 for sure.
I think the last I knew, 3 more kindergartners from Woodview are waiting just for their proofs. So we have 33, it was 31, but 33 new teachers in the district, and we still have 1 EL teacher to hire from Meadowview. We hired a couple today, and we have several assistants that we're still
And the kindergarten teacher.
Yes, and the kindergarten teacher. Kathy was interviewing today, so hopefully we have somebody out there. It's been sort of principals are pretty excited right now. Just a reminder, there's a parade on Saturday. It starts at 6:30, but we're in slot 31. I'm supposed to be there at 6, and our GMS band was out practicing today. Oh, when the Saints come marching in again. So, if anybody wants to join us? I know, Tom, you said you couldn't.
I have to go to the Irish Fest in Milwaukee. I know. Somebody has to go there. You know.
I'll be on shift, so I'll be in the car on the break.
I will be there. I don't know if my wife and Linnea might join us too. But.
I'm going to try, depending on where the kids
All right.
We'll Parkview play it.
Park, I have asked them every year, and they haven't, so I try.
You keep doing this, I'm sure Thomas is going to ask you for a marching band.
As long as we get the ones with the big fuzzy hats. That's all we need. Committee reports, do we have any committee reports?
On to the curriculum
Yeah.
and diversity. He did them for us already.
Alrighty.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything for the diversity in
Go
terms of
ahead.
our next step. This was our last summer meeting, so now we'll go back to the regular Wednesday evening meetings once a month for the school year. The big project now for this next year, and as I've explained multiple times before, each year has been a specific goal that we've set as a committee. This next year is to review all the policies and making sure the language in all the policies is equitable, social justice, and diversity based. So that includes all the groups which are protected and all the groups that, you know, are safe here as well. So we're looking through that, and that's a long process. So that's going to begin. Paul had presented a little bit about what's happening on the first day of the teachers' meeting next week in terms of information. Do we have a speaker?
Dr. Pat Effiam, and she is the diversity and equity something director of the city of Evanston. Has quite a long bio, lots of different diversity issues. So
There's some really good activity
yeah.
and goals and action taking place.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The consent agenda. If I could have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report.
I'll move.
Second.
Are there any questions?
Braden. Aye. LaCroy.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Motion carries. And we have a handful of action items. Well, that's a long one, isn't it? Just buckle in for the board policy one. That's all I have to say.
You could read old ones and suggestions and then finally get the finished product.
If I could have a motion for consideration of a resolution authorizing and providing for an installment purchase agreement for the purpose of paying the cost of purchasing real or personal property, or both, in connection with the purchase and installation of solar energy panels at 4 of the district school buildings, and for the issue of a $4 million debt certificate, Series 2018, evidencing the rights to payment under the agreement, providing for the security for and means of payment under the agreement of the certificate, and authorizing the sale of the certificate to State Bank of the Lakes.
Can you repeat that?
Wow.
This time in German.
So moved.
That'd be impressive. Second.
Okay.
Weedman.
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Braden. Aye. LaCroy.
Are we voting to have Stephen say it in German?
Yes.
No, I'm an aye.
Strack.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, if I get a motion to approve the installation of playground equipment at Prairie View.
I'll move. Second.
Any questions?
We're about 8 weeks out before we will have it installed.
Okay.
Conservatively, we're trying to push that timeline up as much as we can.
Okay. LaCroy.
Aye.
Braden. Aye. Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, if I get a motion to approve the installation of access to the Prairie View playground.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? That's just providing the sidewalk.
Sidewalk,
Okay.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Braden. Aye. LaCroy.
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, if I could have a motion to approve the Frederick parking lot bid.
We'll talk about this one a minute.
Yeah, we'll move in second first, and we'll have discussion.
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
Can someone explain exactly what the scope of this project is, and does it include the west lot? I mean, I read the proposal, the letter. I just want, let's
Yeah,
talk
so
about
I
it.
have a whole thing, if you don't mind, I'll just go through all of it at this point.
Yeah.
So what I'm handing out right now is something that we got from Erickson Engineering. This is the proposal for, this is the proposal for the restriping of the west lot as well. So what you have tonight is the bid itself to approve the bid for renovating the east lot into a bus lot. And then this is what we would be doing in the west lot to then restripe it. On top of restriping it, we'll be seal coating it to kind of increase the length of the life of the parking lot. It also makes it easier to restripe when you're striping over a plain black surface instead of just painting over the lines that are already there.
We did meet today with the traffic engineer from Erickson.
Absolutely. So this was designed by Erickson with a traffic engineer who is has quite an extensive history actually of working with school district parking lots in particular. So he gave us several recommendations, and this was the one that he felt and we felt was the best option. I'm just going to run through a couple of quick things on this, because we made a couple of minor changes that they'll be going back and redesigning and coming back with a cleaner copy. I'm obviously not an artist, so ignore some of the squiggly lines, but just including some stop signs there towards the top, just making sure nobody's racing through, and making sure traffic slows down as it merges there is the first thing. You'll notice that there are 3 additional visitor parking spots for the district office, closer to the district office up there. We'll be adding 6 handicap spaces. They weren't kind of drawn in there, but you'll see that in the next version that we'll be sending out. On the very bottom, you'll notice that there's a little walkway there. It's currently 4 feet wide. We're actually going to be, the red lines are, we're going to be shifting the whole parking lot just a couple of, the stripes, I should say, not the whole parking lot, thankfully, just a couple of feet. And the reason for that is 4 feet is the ADA compliance, but once you have a heavy snowstorm and you plow snow over there, it's no longer 4 feet wide. So we're going to just widen that out a little bit, and we do have the space to do that. They felt comfortable with making that adjustment. You'll notice there's that little blue line. We're going to have cars queuing all the way around on the right side and on the bottom side of those double arrows. Conservatively, that's about 25 cars that we can have in that queue. If obviously we can have more as it goes all the way back out to Frederick Road, but we'll just have that striped and specifically labeled with signs. This is the queue line, and then obviously the second area will be where cars can pull out and make their exit as they go through.
This includes 149 spaces, which we have 138 now.
Correct. Total, we can get 50 cars if you go all the way out to Frederick Road, so that should more than take care of all the cars that currently are out there, even on a really bad rainy day. Just looking at the eyeball test, so to speak, of seeing how much space there is from the front door of Frederick all the way to 83 is roughly the same length as just going on this outside loop of the parking lot. So we should be more than able to accommodate all of that traffic and get it off of Frederick Road, which should make the village happy.
And we're gonna limit the front circle to buses and preschool or school pickups.
Just the small buses and vans,
Right.
yep.
So the bid you have is for the east lot. It'll be for making that into just buses and buses only. The circle will just be the short buses and for your after-school activity vans, things like that. And then this would be for all the parent parking.
And this will happen after the bus lot is done in the back.
So
Yes.
conservatively speaking, if we approve the bid tonight, Manaville Construction was low bid. They're ready to go Monday morning, and they would get done, barring any major thunderstorms or things like that, in early October. And then our goal would be to have this done, the restriping and everything done over like a Columbus Day weekend. So they could seal coat it on a Saturday, let it set, and then on Monday when nobody's here, they can still stripe everything.
I did contact Durham because they were here when we first started talking about this, and they actually had taken their buses out in the parking lot. And I talked to them again yesterday, and they were pleased that the district was considering going that way, and they have several different locations that they load their buses side by side. I know Woodland does it, but there's other places that do it as well. So they're excited about the possibility of moving forward with this.
So they've had an opportunity to see the dimensions and all that sort of thing.
I'm not sure whether have they seen them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of those buses are 42 feet long.
Yes,
When
they
we
brought the
did research,
biggest.
she sent them
Right.
that first sketch that we have, which is the same sketch we really have now, or blueprint we have now.
And then just to give you an idea of the overall project, right, because the bid that I gave you was $189,000 for the east lot. The seal coating and striping of this came in at about $9,600, and then with the engineering fees and all the other associated fees with this, we're looking at about $218,000, which is almost right on the money of what we expected it to be back in May when we first proposed all of this. So we're still on pace to have the village contribute half of it. Bill Hines over at the village will be reviewing some of these documents one last time, but he's been very active in the process to make sure, you know, we're involved and they're getting everything that they need and the village approves it and it is going to accommodate what the village was looking for. So I haven't heard anything from the village saying that they weren't going to continue to contribute.
No, I
towards
saw
it.
Mike Ellis today, and he was asking what our timeline was, and I said we would be discussing it tonight, but I wasn't sure whether it'd be voted on or not, but that I would let him know tomorrow.
And we would typically seal coat and restripe anyway,
Yes.
right? So that cost is kind of
Right.
baked in.
It needed to be done, this is on our list.
So you anticipate the project being done, what, by mid-October?
Yes.
Okay. So this sketch is after the bus thing is done in October? That's what
Correct.
this- all right.
So the first part of the project will be to remove the east lot. The second part
But
of the
what are
project.
you gonna do between now and October 12th or whatever?
It'd be
we'll
just as
continue with
is.
what we have.
Yeah, you can't do it as is, the lines aren't in the right places.
No,
No, everything is status quo until everything would be status quo until they're able to start work on it.
And the only
Yeah.
difference is the teachers won't park in the back lot.
Yeah.
They won't park in the east lot anymore, they'll just have to park in the west lot. And looking at just rough numbers of cars that we've looked at, how many spaces are out there, how many spaces are full during a day, and we feel confident that,
No, there's plenty of room there.
right, it'll be
The point I'm
tight.
bringing up is where the stripes are now, the buses can't fit there, so I would suggest you put some spot stripes someplace on there temporary that can be removed later on.
what do you mean the buses can't?
I mean, right now they.
Remember the buses, they had to leave, the far bus had to leave first,
Well, I think we're going to continue that until this is done, correct?
but buses can't fit, okay. They're 10 feet wide apart in Frederick. And at GMS, they're 13 feet 3 inches apart. And that was the reason why buses were jammed up there. I'm just saying if we're gonna run for 6 weeks or 2 months, I think we need to respot where the bus lines are for those 2 months. We can't operate the same way we did last May.
I don't think anything's changing in that lot, other than there'll be some more cars there, though. And it worked fine last year. You had to have the far bus leave first, but they've been doing that for years. So I guess I don't understand.
The far bus shouldn't leave first because a kid could be running across
Well,
to pick up his bus.
it's
and
not
run in front of
ideal,
the bus.
but I don't think any of the buses leave until all the kids are on, right?
No, and there's at least 3 administrators out there or staff
Yeah.
supervising it. I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
there are people that are out there, they make
And
sure.
it's a transition to a new situation, so, I mean.
Okay, I'm saying during the transition, perhaps we could have some temporary markings there, so the buses would have 13 feet.
We can certainly look into that.
Yeah.
We can look and see if,
Because what we had last spring is,
Ask them what they want.
what there should
If
be.
they want it, we can definitely put it in.
I think there's one less bus, at least one, there may be 2 less buses out there.
Like I said,
Oh,
we'll
really?
contact her,
Yeah. We reduced,
get a measurement, we'll lay it out so that they.
yeah, we can take a look.
I'm not saying you have to paint the whole thing, but put a couple spots in
Right,
there.
that's what I meant, that's fine.
Well, we'll see what we can do in the number of buses. I will find out how many buses we have.
I'd also suggest that about a month out of being done, that we start media blitzing the
Yes.
families that we're changing everything come
Yep,
October.
Eric's on top of it.
We'll do it at back to school night,
Yeah.
and we're letting staff know right away, you know, that this is coming down. And then we know that there'll be a transition probably for about a month, from October when it gets done. I mean, you've got to then kind of train
Right.
people the way that it's gonna work, and, we'll just add extra personnel out there until they, you know, parents get it down, so.
And with Miniville starting on Monday, chances are some of the adjustments will kind of already begin, at least for the staff.
Sure.
Because that lot's already going to be, they're going to be excavating starting Monday, so they won't even have a place to park over there right away.
Well, we blocked it off last week.
So people are already, at least from a staff perspective, getting used to it. And then
Yeah, they'll be used to it. It's the matter of the
parents.
parents understanding the switchover. They're gonna leave on Friday, do it one way and come back on a Tuesday and say, what? So I just thought maybe we did a little media blitz with them, we wouldn't have that issue.
And we're also going to have some additional staff out at least that first week to just encourage
Move
and
along.
coach and
Yeah.
show, like, here's where you got to go. And
In our yellow vests, yes.
We have our wonderful safety yellow
Where-
vests. I'm looking forward to it.
Where the safety cones on your head.
Complete the rule.
John, I'm still not sure I'm clear what we're buying for $189,000. Is it phase 1 east plus phase 2 west?
So to give it the whole thing, the 189 is just the east bus lot by itself. And that's what you'd be approving tonight, but I wanted you to get an idea of the whole scope of everything.
Okay.
So, yeah, what you're approving officially is just the east lot for 189. And then these other pieces would come along, if you went with that bid, then the pieces of restriping and seal coating and other things could also proceed as well. And that would be then roughly 9,600, and then the engineering fees and things like that.
Which we would have paid for, for anyway to do the seal coating.
Absolutely.
Where do we stand on the village's contribution? Is that?
That's in addition.
That's in addition to that.
Correct, so all of the
That's our
costs
half.
that you see is what the total cost of the project would be.
And they're paying.
Oh,
The
they're
village
paying-
is still gonna be paying half of this.
it.
So the scope of the east bus lot is largely unchanged from what we saw in May. I don't know if you remember it, but I remember
It hasn't changed. It's the
yeah,
same.
they just
Same
needed to
design.
kind of change the angle of the
Yeah,
entrance and
Right.
egress for buses to be able to navigate.
correct.
And there was one minor, I wanna say a 2-foot change because of the floodplain, but I mean substantially, no, it's almost identical to what you've seen before.
On the print, I would make sure that the administrators of the bus of Durham, let real bus drivers take a look at it first before we start moving the backhoes in. Because they're the guys that have to drive the bus.
And one of the great parts about Durham is a lot of their managers and things like that do take turns on the buses, so they have chances to see things like that, and they have a good bus driver's eye for these kind of things too.
So they would have 3 buses out with Chris and Ellen and myself and Keith and a variety of people to practice going around. They did go over the curbs and they marked exactly where they were going over the curb to know how much extra room they needed to have. And then they extended that even further out from their trials. That was all part of the things that we were doing. They had brought the biggest buses available to us to make sure that they were able to make the turns and to get in and get out. Their biggest concern was being able to turn left out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And so that's why they were going over the curb and making the decision. So he had a paint can with him and they were marking things, or I don't know if that was you or them. They were-
Not to belabor, but just to make sure I understand the answer to Jason's question, so is the 9,600 a separate approval from us then in the future, or how does that work?
That was more of an informational piece. I don't believe that's something that needs official board approval, but I wanted you to be aware of it, that
Okay.
as you approve the bid for this, we would also be most likely going forward with the other pieces
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
So when we talked about this in the past, a few of us raised the issue of why couldn't we use this west lot for both purposes? So I just want to make sure I understand that it's everyone's view that, we brought the necessary expertise to bear and that there is no viable way to get that west lot to do both of the purposes within the safety parameters we've identified, and that I just want you guys to represent that, yeah, that's where you guys are. with
Yeah,
that.
and to be completely clear, this was from the village, comments from Bill Heinz and from his experts. We paid for the traffic expert at Erickson in order to make sure he's looking at this, and like I said, he has extensive experience with school district parking lots. And I believe his exact words were, not having them in the same lot is parking lot 101 for school districts. It's just not a safe idea to have both the buses and cars in the same parking lot. So from a village perspective, from a traffic engineer perspective, and from an administrative perspective, all of us agree that it really wasn't a safe idea to try to keep the buses in the same lot.
I'm still somehow gagging on the amount, despite the fact that it's going to be split 50-50. From the point of view of a taxpayer and both taxing bodies, it's, left pocket, right pocket. Well, that's the price of poker for doing that kind of work, I guess.
If we're gonna be consistent, then we've gotta have plans down the road to change some of the other schools.
Well, I think we've talked about reviewing those as well, for sure, so, GMS, we definitely need to change that.
And that's something I know we've had in previous board meeting conversations, and we've heard it loud and clear. And now that Erickson has heard that from us as well, I mean, and seeing the expertise of the guy that they have on their staff, I feel very comfortable working with them about addressing some of the other schools as well.
Any other questions? Okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye?
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, if I could have a motion to approve the resolution for the appointment of IMRF authorized agent Marco Medic.
It's really his name, too.
So moved?
I'll second.
Any questions?
Meskel,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye?
Braden,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, would you like me to?
Record it?
I didn't, I was going to pre-record it and then just play tape here on the mic, but, do you want me to read the numbers too, or can I just read the titles? Does anyone have any objection to just reading the titles?
I don't have an objection as saying as listed.
As listed?
Yeah, as listed. You read them, I mean, they're, and it's gonna be public, they can.
That's true. Well, then I'll just do that then, that way.
But in German would be.
In German? Yeah. I took German in high school. I don't really remember much of it. But, if I get a motion to approve the board policies as listed in the agenda.
Move.
Second.
Okay, are we gonna discuss or not?
Yeah, you can, yeah, oh yeah. If anyone has anything in particular they want to talk about.
I just have a couple questions, not necessarily the format or whatever. Cursive instruction, what is our status right now, and where are we going down the road in this country in cursive teaching?
So the state of Illinois never really had cursive listed as one of its standards, but it was a standard practice that everyone taught cursive. And then a while ago, they said no more cursive, even though it really wasn't listed as an instructional standard. No more, and then just recently they added back cursive. I think they got some negative pushback on that. And so that's going to be one of our first agenda items with the Job-alikes, so our literacy Job-alike to focus on that, to make a decision. Interestingly, not everyone had completely ceased using cursive or stopped showing it. And one of the challenges is that cursive is very different for kids to read. And so many of our teachers still continue to practice, maybe not the hours of practice that I remember when I was a child or when I taught third grade, that it was a devoted single subject you spent on cursive. But really, and it hit home for me personally, I have two kids who just needed to have bank accounts that we started, and one needed an ATM card to start thinking about that, and they had to go to sign their names.
They don't have.
And they said, let me practice a little bit, because we reminded them that on those kind of cards, it needs to be repeatable, that you're going to, it's meant to show your identity all the time. So they, both my older children had to practice, and also to get it in the available space. If you know what I'm talking about. And so there's only a little box on certain things and you have to practice. Sometimes very small. So I think we will have a conversation with the Job-alike groups to make a decision on how we're looking at it. We may need to provide some resources. Many of them, though, are available for free digitally, because I'm not looking for a 200-page cursive book, which we probably all remember. Having at some point in time the practice book and do 800 A's and then 800 B's and 800 C's. But it is important for kids to be able to read that.
They're in for so long, that's what the documents are in.
Right.
Yeah.
You're
Primary
almost gonna
sources.
get back to the point where you have an X,
Mm-hmm.
kind of revert back if they don't know how to sign the name.
And we have been focusing in social science so much about primary source documents, and so that has come up. But some of them are still very hard to read, even if you know how to read cursive. They're still very hard to read, but those are all instructional things that the job like will have to make a decision soon about. But most of the teachers said, when we've been discussing it, well, I kind of kept going because I felt like it was important or such. So I don't think it's going to be a
Big deal.
What do you hear horizontally, curriculum director to curriculum director, superintendent to superintendent?
Many still really have no value or need to it. They think that somebody needs to know how to sign their name, but many things digitally are click here for your digital signature. And many school districts are spending more time on keyboarding and technology skills. Some of the curriculum directors are saying that even the keyboarding typing is going to go away because of the voice activated text feature that we all have. If you have Google, you have the ability to voice recognize text. It's not perfect yet, but there's still questions.
Hold on to your seat, Sue. I might be talking into my computer.
The pod bay doors, Hal.
I talk all day, you won't, but now you'll think I'm talking.
Okay, I think this has been answered before to me, but what are we doing this year, PE? How many days a week are we doing it this year?
It's different by grade level.
Okay.
And so Amanda's really been our expert in PE and health. I'm glad to answer, but
So for grade 4 students, we get about 3 days a week,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more or less, depending on the grade level or the week. In grades 5 through 8, students get PE every day except for when they are in their health class rotation. The health class has been encouraged to at least include movement or some sort of physical activity 1 day a week. But as of right now, health is a pull-out from PE.
which is allowed by the code.
Which is allowed. Would we like to see eventually health be a different time than PE? Maybe in the future sometime. But right now, they get pulled out for health for their rotation. And the length of the health rotation varies based on building. Approximately 7 to 9 weeks, between Frederick Middle School and Park, but it just depends on the building.
And anatomy is taught in health classes?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is a shift.
Portions of anatomy.
Portions of
Okay.
it, that is a shift, because the human body has been taken out of the science standards
Mhm.
and has been solely placed into PE and health.
Yeah.
Many school districts have moved health as a rotation. We call it encore here. And so you would have a section of art, you'd have a section of music, you'd have a section of health, you'd have a section of whatever other one you're going to put in. So many school districts have moved to that, what Amanda was just talking about, to get it out of the PE time because of the need for all kids to be active every day. And so that is something that it's one of your interestingly, it's one of the board's priorities for future consideration to look at expanded encore opportunities. So it fits under that discussion when we're ready to have that conversation.
Good. One more question. I didn't pick out opioids in there, is it mentioned any board? Okay, maybe I missed it. Okay. Yeah, okay.
It is part of our health curriculum.
All right.
And I know that Amanda has talked explicitly with the health teachers about
Yeah.
that. It's part of the drug abuse, drug awareness, prevention. It's part of all of those.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is repeated and built on in health for grades 5 through 8. So every grade level has drug abuse and misuse prevention.
Choices.
And healthy choices in their curriculum. So it builds on itself every year as well. So
I'm not sure that we're talking about it with kindergarten kids or first grade specifically with the word opioids, but we're talking about that medication is something that a parent or a guardian helps you with, that's not something that you fool around with or any of those kind of things. To build up to more extensive.
I learned something in the 8-110, it deals with public suggestions and concerns. I thought that when we had audience to visitors, if somebody had a complaint about something or had a question, they'd come up here and then the superintendent would take notes and then give them a phone call the next day. According to the policy, if you've got a gripe or concern that you want to follow up on, you go to during the school day, you go to either a board office or a building and go from there. That's what it actually says.
Yeah, but I.
But if somebody comes here and has a complaint, I know you give them a call.
I do.
Yeah.
I just think that's the best way to go.
So I learned something that way. Good.
Alrighty, anyone else? Okay,
Braden. Aye. Mesco.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Strack.
aye,
Weedman.
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
motion carries. Unfinished business, bus transportation for the manor.
We still do not have any permission from the state to add the slow for school signs on 83, so until we get permission for that, we can't even consider changing the buses. So right now, that's still on hold. You have talked to them.
I've talked to several people. I've even contacted our state representatives in various places, and they've contacted the Department of Transportation, and it's become, as you can imagine, dealing with the state. This hasn't been one of my more pleasurable experiences of trying to find somebody who would help. So we're still working on it. We've sent certified letters that they've requested and haven't heard back, and it's been a wonderful process, as you can imagine, but we're working on it.
So if I could back up a minute, those signs are necessary as a prerequisite to do busing in the, or to walkers in the manor.
Right.
In order to get the safety score
Yes,
at a certain
get the
level.
safety
Okay.
score done, yeah. Right now, without those signs, the safety score is too high for us to use it.
To even consider it.
Right.
Okay.
Update on ESSA and EBF?
Well, the final designations will occur in October. We've been told loud and clear that they could change. We could have more, to either go up or they could go down. So we're going to continue to take more training, and I had a webinar on Friday. They still are not clear, as Tom, you said, the state really doesn't have their act together with respect to any of this. So talking to the high school superintendent, we feel that because these could change, that we should wait to talk to the parents and have a parent meeting after we get our final designation.
So we could explain to them.
So we could, yes. So if we go out and have one now and then all of these designations change, because the initial preliminary designation was only based on 25% of the total process. This time you're going to have growth, you'll have attendance, which is a huge one. What else am I missing?
The newer data.
The new data, right, the access in the 17-18 park, so all of
They
those.
had based it on the 16, 17 data that they had, and now the final designations are more data, but from a year later. So it could be completely different comparisons. That's kind of what Tom was mentioning. The person who did all of the initial calculations for the state, who only is really the person who was able to explain all those designations and the calculations, no longer is employed at the state. So they are currently looking for a new person to take that role and have it ready for October.
That sounds like it's gonna go swimmingly.
Well, and then the whole attendance issue, so before, you could have either excused or non-excused absences. Now, it's just a total of absences, no matter what it's for. The attendance days, non-attendance days count, no matter what whether it's you're sick, whether you're visiting a sick relative, whether you're on vacation. Pardon me?
Visiting the mouse.
Visiting the mouse, whatever. So that's another change, and I am sending a letter out to the parents to let them know the changes in the attendance. So,
The meeting I attended was a good number of superintendents across Lake County that had been arranged, and a good number of high school that had not been identified before. but realized that all their data had not been considered yet. So the state very clearly made it obvious that there were going to be a significant number of high schools that were going to be on the list for the final ones that they thought were
Free and clear.
they were free and clear. So they were mighty concerned.
And then, good news for the evidence-based funding, and I'll let you tell it.
So the new additional funding that we are scheduled to receive from the state is $898,000. So to be clear, there was the initial funding that the state was giving out. Last year, they gave us an additional $400,000, and now this year, it's going to, that $400,000 becomes the new base, what they start from. And now this year, we'll be getting $898,000 on top of that. And just looking at the two payments we've received already on the 7th and 5 hours ago, that is about what they're looking to be giving us. So we do have, we're pleasantly surprised. We dropped a tier to tier 1, and we're able to receive some additional funding from the state for that. So it's
So
very
now what
good
we
news
will
for us.
do is to go back and look at the 27 elements, look at, I'm combining that with the board priorities, and we'll come back to you with some recommendations about how to spend that money. Probably don't want to spend it all, but
No, but it definitely gives you options.
it does.
Because then that becomes the new base.
Correct. So,
That definitely gives us a lot of
Mhm.
better options moving forward
yes. And just reminder though, it has to be something within those.
in those
27.
parameters, right?
So, right now, what I'm doing is looking at the gap analysis of where they expect us to be and where we are, and then we'll be able to make some recommendations. A lot of it's gonna have to focus on the EL population, since that's where we are low in our primary designation, so.
So these are all incremental amounts based on EBF. So there was this hold harmless amount.
Right.
In the past, we've experienced, prorations on that. Is that still the case?
That's why we're being very careful, that's why I said don't wanna spend it all. So we were $8,000 low at the end of last year. It was supposed to be 408, we got 401, so 7,000. So, but I just wanna make sure if that happens again, we're not spending it all,
Yeah, the claim is that they will not prorate.
but they did.
History says they will prorate,
Yes.
so.
But we're very excited, because I think we can do a lot to help that population as well as do some other things.
All populations.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
As long as we keep spelling tier, T-I-E-R, instead of the other way, that's good.
I don't know, maybe it would help if we spelled it the other way.
Yeah. That's the confusing part of all of this, because for the evidence-based funding, tier 1 means it's a better amount in the world of finances because you get more money. In the other side, tier 1 is not the place you want.
How did they decide we dropped from 2 to 1?
That's a fantastic question.
It's
It's a pretty calculated formula based upon available local resources.
And it's that 27 elements, and then
Right.
taking all that data.
Yeah.
We were right on the border, I know.
Last year.
Yes, and Chris said, boy, just one more point, and we would have had that
And
extra
we dropped
last year.
that point.
And we got it,
So
so.
it could be in any of the elements or just a
Mhm.
demographic switch of
Right.
Yep.
some small
EAV
magnitude.
values.
It wasn't, we knew it wasn't gonna have to take much to make that switch, so. So even if we don't get it next year, we change tiers, at least for this year, we've got,
Well, and it won't go-
Because it's
won't
and
not-
it
go
won't
down.
ever go away, so it's.
Right.
yeah.
So that money's now baked into
I
next
just don't
year's
know how
base,
to-
and we get additional funding based
Yeah.
upon that, so.
Solar project.
Turn that over to you, John.
Solar project's moving along well. Frederick is substantially complete at this point, I believe. They've got the fence up and everything is going well along there. The only thing that we're looking at now is some fencing along the east side. We have some decisions to make about how we're gonna fence along there, but we have the wood fence on the north side, the east side, and the south side, so along Quail Creek and arguably along the more important parts and the visible parts of the project. So those are all up. Prairie View is up. They're throwing up panels and they're getting a lot of the wiring run now. A lot of the wiring run to the building has already been done, thankfully. So that's moving along. At Park, we have the solar panels on the roof already. They're also moving along pretty well with those, getting all the wirings done and having that all wrapped up. The last step in this process now is just gonna be the middle school. So there's Still don't have a timeline from PSI of when that's gonna happen. We're really hoping that we'll have something tomorrow and have some more information for you at the September 5th board meeting about what that time frame is gonna look like. But that's when PSI has been saying that they'll have a whole timeline and time frame, and we'll start talking about wrapping that up. We've already reached out with PSI to the fire department, and the three of us are in communication about setting up conversations about obviously all the safety that involves, having solar panels on the roof and having solar panels out in the fields. So we're working with the two different local village fire departments for that. And is there anything else I'm missing?
We're waiting for the date for ComEd to hook up Frederick's.
Right, to turn off Frederick.
So when they go through each school, ComEd has to come out and PSI has their electricians out as well, and they shut the building down. All of these will be in off-school hours. Obviously, at this point, they were hoping to have Frederick done sooner, but weren't able to meet that with ComEd's time frame. So ComEd comes out, they shut the power down to the building, they switch out the meter to a meter that's better able to recognize both outflow and inflow now at this point, right, for electricity. So those are all moving along pretty well. We should have some time frames also tomorrow from PSI about when the buildings will be shutting down on weekends or an evening to get those meters swapped out.
And once each set of array is done and online, but we're not waiting for not waiting for all three. So
No.
one gets ready next week, it's
Right, then we
up
go
and
on
running
that,
and
yes.
starting the process of generating solar power for us, and then move to the next
Yep.
one.
Yeah, we were hoping to have Frederick up and running last week, and unfortunately, like I said, ComEd is ComEd, and we weren't able to make that timeline. But the idea is, yeah, exactly, once that meter swaps out, we should be good to go. We're already setting up stuff with technology as well for the metering and the tracking, and to make sure that we're getting the appropriate credits to go along with it. But yeah, once that meter's swapped, we're starting to send electricity into the grid.
Good.
So
I've attended some of the meetings, they're on Thursday at 10 o'clock, didn't have one last week, but I've sat in on meetings when I was at the Navy and Newport News on destroyers, and I've sat in on meetings on the science wing. These guys know what they're doing, and they're very professional, and I've been impressed with what I've seen.
Good to hear.
Is there a service line running from the array to the building, or does it just go from the array to the grid, metered at that point?
Right to the building.
Okay.
They've attached a panel on the backside of the building and then piped over to where ComEd's at. So there's our service for the power coming from the panels, and then it'll send it over to ComEd so we can record what we're making or producing, I should say. And ComEd's also gonna obviously watch what we're producing, so they can, I don't know how that technical part works, so they transfer that stuff back and forth. But as we're not using power, obviously we'd be going into the grid, and there was, like right now, we're starting to ramp up for school, so we'd be using the power that we put in the grid on the air conditioning like we're running right now.
And then additionally, on the finance side, now that we have that, a loan commitment that we just entered, or talked about, is now a good time to show a revised cash flow statement, or would it make more sense to see a couple of these get online to get some usage/savings data? And I'll leave it to your discretion, but sometime soon, I'd like to see an update to that, because I know, at one time when we were tossing this around, we talked about it being very cash flow positive very early on in the project. And I know that's some things have changed with the financing, and some things have changed with the SREC environment, and I just want to get a sense of what a cash flow statement looks like.
I'd be happy to provide that to you.
Maybe if it doesn't make perfect sense before some of these go online, maybe, into the next couple months.
Even if it's just a projected,
Yeah.
and then we can then once everything's up in line, then we kind of watch it grow as we go.
Absolutely.
Because we started out with those projections initially were about $7 million, if I remember right, but we're only borrowing $4 million.
Mhm.
So in theory, payoff should be sooner, provided everything stays the same.
The other assumptions did change, namely the SREC credit. That's on an open market. So don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert on this market, but my understanding is that market's changed. Some of the assumptions that were in play
A little bit
at the
lower.
beginning of thinking about this project are changed enough to make a difference in the cash flow.
All right. Superintendent search?
So on September 13th, the search firm will be meeting with, I sent you all an agenda, the district office staff at 2 o'clock. There'll be 3 people there doing these interviews, so that's why we can have 3 meetings at a time. So one will meet with the district office staff, one with the building administrators. We won't need the PTO one. Then at 2:45, they'll meet with just the union executive officers from both the PSRP and the teachers union. Then at 3:45, it'll be for all staff. Then starting at 4 o'clock, they will meet with board members. So they'll have 3 people, so there could be 3 at 4, there could be 3 at 4:45, 3 at 6:30, and then they'll have a community forum at 7. And if it doesn't fit in, those times don't fit in with any of your schedules, they will do individual interviews on the phone.
Is the community forum also at the district office?
It's at the Media Frederick Center, Frederick School Media Center.
I would like the 6:30.
You'd like a 6:30 slot? Okay.
Because I won't be able to get back.
All right, got that one?
I
6:30.
signed up for
think you
I
signed
signed up
up,
for the
yes.
later one, so.
And we're still on track for timeline, everything?
Yes.
What's the communications regarding the community forums?
Leslie's going to have it on the websites. The building principals are going to put it in their newsletters.
Do we want to mention it at back to school nights too, or?
Yeah, we could. Good idea. And I'll be mentioning it to the staff on Monday.
Or have a flyer on the table at the
Yeah, going to have a flyer.
back to school nights or whatever, you know?
Good idea.
We do not have any new business topics for future agenda items. One thing that I think I mentioned to you previously is that we should, it's been a while since we've looked at our board priorities, so maybe we should go through that process again.
Yep, and I've got them, I have them right on my desk, so that works out good.
Whether that involves a community forum again or whatever.
Right.
You know, we can talk about that, but I think it's time to revise or review what we have.
And I can by next week have some recommendations, a draft of recommendations for the additional evidence-based that should fit in with the board priorities.
I was hoping to have a discussion. It occurs to me, and just turning on the TV or looking on Facebook or Twitter even, that there seems to be a crisis of critical news consumption as it relates to our government, to civics in general. I was just hoping that maybe we could talk about what our philosophy is for a civics curriculum. And I think we talked a little bit about, in the technology rotations that we might do, we talk about news consumption as it relates to online. Just a general, here's what the state says is required for civics, here's what we do, here's the administration's philosophy on it, and maybe talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Great idea.
Yeah.
We have lots to share, so that we'll be glad to do that. The new social science standards actually has a whole strand called civics, and civics actually starts in kindergarten. And so some of it is even how do people make decisions, to talk about voting and about hearing all people's opinions and such, all the way through more government-related things and such. So for K-4, that is a brand new curriculum expectation starting this school year. So we have,
You could do a presentation.
we
on that.
have information that we can share, and the middle school are 1 year ahead of us, so they've already started to do some civics things, and part of it is community involvement, finding social issues that are important to you, researching them, figuring out ways that you can take a stance. The big idea about the new social science standards is that they have moved from it all being history-based, dates, figures, people's names to a bigger global view about being a member of a society and such. Amanda, did I miss something? You've been working on that too with me.
Also, we talked about consumption using technology. The technology standards can actually talk about going through and how to determine, you know, if it's a credible source, if it's a non-credible source. So I know that not only are social science teachers doing that with their students, but when the students are in the media center, the information specialists are going through that with their students.
Evaluating sources, understanding who is credible. I'm just going to say something maybe not appropriate. Somebody in their basement writing a blog is very different than it is
A new source.
the Smithsonian Institute Research Department, for example. Very different sources of information.
Good change.
I heard the first two letters.
You know, stop and think when you first started really getting interested in politics, I mean, how old you were at the time. And it was at that time for you, and this is what you saw, what we have today, and you think, this is the norm? You would say, oh, I hope you would say, holy mackerel, but maybe you wouldn't, because you think this is the way it's supposed to be. I don't know. These are strange times.
Anything else for future agenda?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not for an agenda, but I just remind everybody that Barn Fest is a week from Saturday, and have a good time and out at the fairgrounds, and you can get your tickets to that, eat there, and you can get on www.foundation46.org and get your information there.
Thank you.
Actually, I did have one other thing, and just quickly, Chris had already done a budget summary for you back in the spring, but I'll be doing another budget summary for you at the next board meeting with the intention of the board meeting after that being a final budget for approval, so I just wanted to
You need to be
mention
on
it.
the first draft?
Yeah.
Still no public comments, I imagine. If I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Parkinson, oh, sorry, Mesco,
Aye.
Mack, Strack,
Aye.
Weedman, Braden. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. I didn't start. I will